Executive Mark Poloncarz held his weekly COVID briefing today, announcing that 84,000 people living in Erie County have gotten their first dose of vaccine.
But he also said that 9 youth sports teams have had to stop playing because of outbreaks on their squads. Channel 2's Dave McKinley is here tonight with some other notes from the news conference.
It's been about a week and a half since the governor announced that come the Ides of March, the state will allow wedding receptions with up to 150 guests to resume, provided everyone on site has proof of a negative COVID test and that the names of attendees be provided to local health departments in the event of the need for contact tracing. 10 days later, have any happy couples reached out to the county health department to inquire about a wedding?
We're getting calls, but we haven't gotten the guidance yet from New York State as to how it's supposed to proceed. And think about it this way, David. We're just getting information from New York State 2 days ago in regards to some of the stuff that's going into effect in less than a week.
What he's speaking about there is the governor's announcement that counties which have up till now been responsible for vaccinating those in Category 1B, like first responders and teachers, will also play a role in vaccinating those with comorbidities.
Yes, we will be.
But the county executive says because this was just dropped on them, they're still trying to figure out how that's going to work.
It's a complicated process. It is not something that you can just announce overnight and it's done.
He greeted as welcome news word from the governor today that the state would be getting a 5% increase from the feds in its allocation of vaccine. But whether that will bring Erie County a commensurate increase, Poloncarz can't say. And even if it does,
5% sounds great, but when you're getting less than 2,000 doses, so we're talking about 100 extra doses.
In the meantime, the county is still trying to reschedule its own clinics that were canceled in late January due to a lack of supply from New York State. Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.